Greetings and salutations, mages and mystics. My name is Stephen Coy, the founder of Valiance Games, and today I want to show you all how to play our very first trading card game. Valiance is a combat-based tactical card game. Players start with 100 health points. Players cast spells and use skills to build spell power, aiming to have higher spell power than their opponents while attacking so they can reduce their opponent's health by the difference. The last player to keep their health points wins the game. The catch is that there are 10 different elements which are referred to as components in this game. They are pyromancy, which is fire, hydromancy, or water, geomancy, or earth, aeromancy, or air, electromancy, electricity, biomancy, nature, psychomancy, psychic, ferromancy, metal, umbramancy, shadow, and astromancy, cosmic. Each of these components acts as an engine that builds spell power in different ways. These playstyles all mingle together, supporting each other in innumerable ways, but there is a cost when adding many components to a single spellbook. When setting up a game, the first thing a player needs is a spellbook or a deck. A spellbook may have a minimum of 40 pages or cards. Each of these are a page. Only 3 copies of any page may be in a spellbook at once. The minimum number of pages increases based on how many components or elements you play, thanks to the primary mechanic that this game is built around, the burden of arcane knowledge. In the world of Mysthesia, where Valiance is set, the burden of arcane knowledge is a universal law that states that a mage has a maximum amount of ether that the body can possess, and a maximum amount of information that their mind can hold, and that amount of effort needed to cast spells multiplies based on the amount of components needed to make up the spell. In this game, you can combine your spells to add spell power as you play, fusing them together to form combo attacks that aim to overwhelm your opponents or block an assault, so fusing elements increases the burden on you as a mage. The first way that this limitation is implemented is on the number of pages you may have in your spellbook when deck building. As mentioned previously, the minimum is normally 40, provided you're using a single component. If I were to start with pyromancy, then add hydromancy to my spellbook, the minimum number of pages I have in my spellbook must be 50. In standard play, the maximum number of pages you may have in your spellbook is 60, meaning that you may have up to 3 different components in your spellbook at once and no more. There is an exception to this rule, however, and that comes in the form of chromancy pages or null pages. These are colorless, meaning they do not contribute to the maximum number of pages in your spellbook when considering deck building. The second and third way the burden of arcane knowledge is implemented in this game is in the maximum number of resources you may have during the game. The plan is where you hold all of the pages during the game. It is known as your hand in other card games. They are kept private from opposing players. You don't want to just give away your plan, right? During the game, you read pages from your spellbook and add them to your plan. This means that you draw cards from your deck and add them to your hand. Your plan may hold up to 10 pages and no more. This game is built on hard limits, so if you have 10 pages and a page tells you to read 2 pages, you only get to read 1. Ether is the source of magical power in this realm. In this game, ether is used to play all of your pages. The top left corner of every page displays its cost. You may have a maximum of 10 ether as well. These limits impose proactivity among players, as free resources are lost when they are at their maximum, and money is useless if it is never spent. So far, we've discussed how pages have elemental factions and cost. They also have titles to indicate their names. They have skills that explain what to do when you play the card. The way you read skills in Valiance are as follows. The top section explains what to do when you play the page, and is the only part of the skill that really matters. Some skills have requirements, which are always preceded by if, when, or while, followed by their condition before telling you what you can do with it. The second section explains what the bolded keywords mean, adding context to the skill. The third section is flavor text. Every page has flavor text. Pages have types as well. There are 4 types of pages in this game: spells, familiars, strategies, and constructs. Spells are the most important types of pages in a game. They are the primary way to reduce the health points of opposing players. Spells are different from other pages in that they have a space reserved to show their spell power in the top right corner. The number shown here is the base spell power of the spell. The book icon represents spell power, and anytime it shows up, it will always refer to spell power. The gems help further represent the spell's spell power. Full gems are 10, half gems are 5, gray gems represent the base spell power, and colored gems represent spell power that can be gained through that page's skill. As here, it just gives you 10 spell power, it gives you an additional gem in that color. Spell power is accumulative, but it wears away at the end of the turn, and it can only be counted during battle if a spell is actually played. This is important as there are many types of skills that boost spell power, and none of the bonuses will matter if you don't actually cast a spell. Spell power is used to defend yourself from attackers as well. You can reduce the damage you would take from an attack by increasing your own spell power and casting spells to block. If you, as the defending player, have equal or greater spell power than an attacking player, you fully block the attack. Most of your spellbook will usually consist of spells for these reasons. Spells usually have an evoke skill and or threshold keyword skills. Evoke skills are the base skills on a page. You get plus 10 spell power is an example of this page's evoke skill. They are usually the first line of text on this page's skill. These skills are always the first skills to resolve when the spell is cast. They do not have the if, when, or while that other skills have, such as these. This would be qualified as a trigger skill, which is another common type of skill on pages outside of threshold keyword skills. Threshold keyword skills flavor spells to match their respective components. They act as limiters, keeping the true power of the spell only for those devoted to the ways of that component. Examples of the threshold keyword include stable, which is active so long as 3 or more constructs are exhausted on the battlefield. Most spellbooks are built around reaching 1 or 2 threshold keywords in order to amass the resources and spell power needed to win the game. Next are familiars. Familiars act as further ways for players to protect themselves from opposing players' spells, while additionally allowing them to execute their own tactics. Many familiars have enchant skills that can be used by exhausting them, which is turning them sideways. Familiars on their side of the battlefield must have unique titles. So if you have one Hydra Elemental on the battlefield, you cannot have another Hydra Elemental from you or any other way on the battlefield at the same time. Familiars have an epic skill to compensate for this, which can be used by exhausting them and tearing a page of the same title. Now, we have strategies. Strategies are quick ways for players to tap into their component's capabilities or to enhance the power of their spells. They offer more value than any page when referring to the skill, offering the same benefit given by a spell of higher cost. Some can even be used on other players' turns through the use of augment skills, such as this page here. Augment skills allow these pages to be played at any time during either player's planning or action step, which we will get to later. Finally are constructs. Constructs are weapons that can be used to enhance a player's spell power or to advance their tactics. They contribute as win conditions in many spellbooks. Some constructs, like familiars, have enchant skills that can be activated by exhausting them. Others have ongoing skills that stay active for as long as they remain on the battlefield. A good spellbook usually has some balance of these types of pages working in cohesion to win the game. Now, let's talk about how to actually play the game. To actually play the game, we start by shuffling the pages in our spellbook. and placing them in the appropriated zone, which will be in the bottom right-hand corner of your battlefield. You read the first 5 pages, adding them to your plan. Then you determine who goes first randomly using methods such as flipping a coin, rolling a dice, or playing rock, paper, scissors. During follow-up games, the loser decides who goes first, but for the first game, it must be decided using the random factor. All players start with 0 ether, except the last player, who starts with 1. They are also the only player who gets to cast a spell on their first turn. To encourage fair, easy, and competitive play, there is a standard arrangement to the battlefield. As previously mentioned, your spellbook will go in the bottom right-hand corner. Your memory will go face up in the top right-hand corner. This is because this is a public area that will be accessed by multiple players. You may only have up to 5 familiars on the battlefield and 5 constructs on the battlefield at once. As mentioned before, each familiar on one player's side of the battlefield must have a different title. It is highly advised for players to place their familiars in front of their constructs, since familiars act as an additional foam or frontline defense, but otherwise, they're free to lay and adjust their pages as needed to properly communicate the intent behind their positioning. You can stack them together if you want to account for multiple things, you can move them around, and all of those things should not matter during gameplay. The memory is the discard pile, and the places there must remain face up in order to allow them to remain public. The order of the memory does not and will not ever matter, and to reiterate, it is public to all players. So if they ask to see the contents of your memory, you are required to give them the contents of your memory. All of this makes it very useful to have this continue to be in front of your spellbook so as to prevent them from reaching across and potentially knocking over pages of your spellbook and causing issues that way. Spells and strategies will be played in the play area when used before entering the memory. Turns are set up in steps. There are 4 steps in each turn. They are the recovery, planning, action, and end step. At the start of each turn, the turn player enters the recovery step, where they will first read a page and gain 1 ether, or charge 1 ether. They may take any pages that are refreshed and turn them upright. During the planning step, you may play as many pages that are not spells as you can afford to. Strategies, to reiterate, go in the play area when used and are sent to the memory, and constructs and familiars remain in their respective zones when conjured and transmuted respectively. It is important to note that you may only conjure 1 familiar each turn, even if through a skill. While on the battlefield, you may use the enchant skills on your familiars and constructs in any order you wish. Enchant skills are the previously mentioned exhaust skills that exist on these pages, allowing you to turn them sideways to activate their abilities. They can be used immediately after play, but epic skills, however, cannot be used the turn the familiar is conjured. During the action step, you may choose one of 3 actions. You may either read an additional page from your spellbook, charge an additional ether, or you may cast a spell. Passing is highly promoted in this game as a viable option during many turns, and it is often the only way to gain additional resources in a turn. Casting a spell is treated as a heavy commitment, one not to be done unless you are sure you can pressure away your opponent's offense or mount a sturdy defense for a potential backswing due to the fact that you sacrifice the ability to gain the additional page or ether that you could need for later on. Many games are lost to players overextending on an aggressive swing and forfeiting those resources. Do not feel pressure to play something every turn. You are highly encouraged to spend some time building those resources and setting up for bigger and better attacking turns. If you do choose to cast a spell, do so by paying the spell's ether cost and placing the spell in the play area. This one costs 2, so I reduce the ether by 2. You place it in the play area, which goes in front of the rest of your board. You resolve any evoke skills, which in this case would be to read an additional page, and giving me +2 for each page of my plan. And this is spell power, of course. So I would calculate the base spell power, then increase my spell power further on the amount that I have on this skill, followed by any spell power that I would gain from any front or back row pieces that I have during the game. On casting the first spell, you may choose either an opposing player or one of their exhausted familiars. This is an important aspect to remember in the game. When familiars are on the battlefield and they are exhausted, they can be chosen as attack targets. So while their skills are very powerful, if they are left vulnerable, they can be taken out by an opponent choosing to cast a spell against them. They can also be used as mentioned as defense when your opponent casts their first spell attacking you or one of your exhausted familiars. You can choose to exhaust one of your refreshed or upright familiars and block the entirety of the spell. You may also choose to pass priority as the defending player, returning it back to the attacking player. Either one of these actions, casting a spell to block, blocking with one of your familiars, or passing, will pass priority back to the attacking player, allowing them to cast an additional spell if they wish, or pass back. If both players pass in a row, combat ends and spell power is calculated. It is important at this point to reiterate that if a player chooses not to cast a spell, they will not receive the bonuses of any pages or skills on their battlefield that increase their spell power. Follow these steps each turn. The game flow becomes very intuitive after a game or two thanks to the hard limitations set in the game, making it easier to discern what you can and cannot do in a turn. Be mindful of your defenses when using familiars, and always save 2 ether for ether cancel, the most powerful form of defense, allowing you to reduce all spell power to 0 no matter what is played afterward. This is your primary shield and your opponent's as well. Play around these defenses to win the game. Passing you can also use to bait defense and allow your opponent to attempt to play another page overextending themselves. You can use this as an advantage to get damage in where they may not expect it, or to force them to play an ether cancel earlier than they may have wished to. Use these to become the most powerful mage. Thank you for checking out this game's tutorial. Have a magical day. I can't wait to see what you come up with in this game.